Hi, I'm Carla Schaefer, Auntie's Beads designer, and we are going to learn how to do odd count peyote stitch. I'm going to go over the list of supplies needed for this project. I'm using 3 different colors of a 6/0 seed bead, and you will also need just a few 11/0 seed beads in a complementary color. And you will need a metal shank button. Actually, it doesn't have to be a metal shank button. You can use any kind of a shank button. And also, we'll be using Fireline. I'm going to be using crystal because of the color of my seed beads, and you'll need a needle, and you can use a 10 or a 12, and you will also need a nipper tool. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is thread on our stop bead, and I have threaded a little over a yard of crystalline onto my needle, and I'm going to use a contrast color or a different seed bead for my stop bead so I don't get confused within my beadwork. So I'm going to string it onto my thread. I'm going to leave myself 6 to 8 inch tail, and then I'm going to run the needle back through the opposite way, and this will lock our bead in place, and this keeps our beadwork from sliding off the end of our thread. And then the next thing I've done is I've laid out the color pattern for the bracelet, and this will help. By doing this before I start stringing will help create my pattern. And so this is odd count, so I've got 9 beads here, so I'm just going to thread all 9 of these beads onto the thread. And then I'm going to let them drop down to the stop bead. This starts out just like even count peyote. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pick up this color, and I'm going to run my needle through the second bead, and then I'm going to pick up this color and run it through the bead after that. Everything starts off just like even count until we start to turn the row. And I'll tighten this up here. Okay, now when we get here, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up. I'm actually going to bring the stop bead toward the beadwork. Now when I bring on the last bead here, there's nothing for it to go through. So what we're going to do is we're going to string it onto our thread. This is in the odd count. There's no, no bead for it to go through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my needle. I'm going to run it through the end bead. Okay, what I'm going to do again is I've dropped this last bead on. I'm going to run through the last 2 beads here. So let me move that so you can see. Alright, so I'm going to run the needle through this bead and up through this one. I'm sorry, that caused it to tingle. Okay, and when you pull that, then you see that that bead starts, it stacks like it's supposed to, like it does in all the others. So now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring it down in this bead, bring it up through there. And what we're doing is we're making kind of a little loop to lock that bead in place. So then I'm going to come back through this top bead, I'm going to go back down through that one, back through this bottom one, and now I'll be ready to come back out through this bead, and we can start our new row. And you don't have to, but I like to flip my work. So now I'm back at the starting point, so I'm just going to flip it over and start picking up the next row of beads to complete the row. And so with every turn that you make, it's like every other turn actually, so I'm going to show you as I start filling in the gaps here. Again, just like even count. And see, at this point you're not going to have to do that until you start the next row. And again, I'm going to flip my work over. And picking up my back through. And when we get to the end of this row, we're going to have to do that turn again. So I'll show you one more time how to do it, and then I'll let you finish the majority of your bracelet, and then we'll show you how to add the button in the loop. So here again, I'm back to the end where I need to pick up this bead, last bead. I'm going to run it through. And I'm going to run it through this one and the second, then the one next to it, till that brings that bead up to stack. I'm going to bring it through this one, back through these two. Once you've done it at least twice, you really get the hang of it. Back through this. Remember to keep your tension. And then you flip over and you start your row again. When your thread becomes too short to work with and you know that you're going to have to add a thread, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to run the thread back through and half hitch knot and start a new thread. Now I like to do this when I've already done this hard turn. So we've already done the hard turn, you know, and locked this bead in over on this end. So what I'm going to do now that I'm on this side of the work is I'm just going to weave the thread back through a couple of beads, and we're going to do some half hitch knots, which means you're just going to take your needle, you're going to catch a thread, and then create that loop, put your needle through the loop, and then pull, run it back through more seed beads, all the way to the other side of the work if at all possible. Catch the thread again, run the needle through the loop, this is to tie the thread off, and then we basically do the same thing to tie a new thread on. This just happens to be my least favorite part of weaving, is adding in threads. So just do that, and I like to kind of exit out here, and then all we're going to do is take our needle off the thread and trim this with the nipper tool as closest to the beadwork as possible, and then we'll tie a new thread on.